Today I will continue my musings on creativity, and as I spoke about that fountain earlier on, how it reminds me of creativity spouting out of writers and artists. And I will continue with publishing. So many writers are very hung up on when their works get published, how they get published, they get published by whom and where, and of course if they win any awards or prizes. So all of this is nice, but perhaps all this is positive. But sometimes they get very depressed and down if their work is not published or is not taken by any journal or magazine or publisher. So my question to the writers is, what is the intrinsic worth of your work? So as soon as you are satisfied with a poem or short story or a creative non-fiction, and it's finalized according to you, then the poem comes into existence and it already has a certain worth. So whether it gets published immediately or after a few months or after 1 year or 2 years, from my point of view, it doesn't really matter. So the poem or your creative works should have a certain value and worth in your eyes. You should be satisfied with it. How and where it gets published, maybe it deserves all the accolades and awards and prizes. But even if it doesn't get it, it doesn't matter, because it's a work of art that came into existence because of you. So I want to take the example of, for example, of John Keats, a romantic poet whom you probably studied at school. So when he died, he thought he would never become famous, and almost 20 years later, his work started to be talked about, and then more and more people grew interested in his work, and 50 years later, more people came to know of his work and so on. So it took a long time. The same thing with Emily Dickinson. Though she belonged to an educated family, she probably didn't find the atmosphere around her very receptive for her poems, or maybe she was just very reclusive. Anyway, she hid thousands of her poems under her mattress, and luckily her family was able to recognize their work and publish them, and so her poems came into the public eye only after her death, but that was her choice. Anyway, and there are many like William Blake, and I can go on and on. So there are many, many poets or writers or artists whose work gained a certain value after their deaths or later in life. But the fact is that as soon as John Keats or Emily Dickinson or William Blake or other people, as soon as they created their poems, it had a certain intrinsic worth. And this applies to all people, to all writers. So first of all, think about, does your work have an intrinsic worth in your own eyes, or is it dependent on other people? Of course, if your peers can read it, if other readers can read it and give you some feedback, then of course it's always a good idea. I mean, that's always morale boosting and so on. But first of all, just because a work of art exists, it has a value in itself. So I would invite you to think about this sentence and re-evaluate all your work and see your body of work and how much you've created, and just be proud of the fact that you are able to create all these works. And then of course you can also be proud for any comments you get, or when they are published, or when you get any accolades or prizes, etc. So I wish you well on your creative journey, and thank you for watching this video.